And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all for signing into our presentation this evening. It's my great pleasure to co-present with a friend and colleague, Brian Bailie. And Brian, before we get going, could you maybe give us just a couple of sentences about your awesomeness, please?
My awesomeness. I coached collegiately for close to 20 years, men's and women's, the last 12 on the women's side. I walked away from that about 5-6 years ago and started what we call MyGameForge, which is a golf developmental platform about statistics, training, and everything great about golf. So that's what I've been doing here. And I'm also an aim-point instructor as well as Gareth. That sums up my golf life. And I'm stuck here in the States in Virginia. We just had a snowstorm, so I'm happy that I actually can go live with you.
Great. Brian, you were in Edmonton with me. I believe it was May 2019. We spent some time there on the greens. Quite interesting green complexes, aren't they?
Very much so. Very slow.
Yeah. No slopes either.
No. I loved it out there. It was gorgeous. I was there for a week and it didn't rain at all for an entire week, which is what I understand is Ireland's really like. It's just a disinformation act on it rains there all the time.
Okay, so we ready to get started?
I'm ready when you are.
All right, let's go. Let's just get this up. Okay. So as Brian has indicated, he is one of the co-founders of GameForge. Brian, can you give us just a little insight into GameForge and what it currently does and what it's going to expand to become?
Yeah, GameForge, like I said, is a platform where we are based around your statistics, your data information, and from that, we're able to assign you drills, give you a good understanding of where you're at, what your next level of golf would be. So if I'm averaging 7-8 over par and I want to get to 5 over par, what does that take? What numbers do I need to really move to get that? So we've come up with a really simple way of showing you strengths and weaknesses and really give you a good concept of how to improve and how to set up a golf course to allow you to enjoy this wonderful game of golf.
I think, well, I hope this evening we're going to introduce some concepts that might be contrary to what people currently think or perceive, right? There are some myths out there that certainly, as a junior golfer, I was exposed to that on reflection, and the deeper we all go into the data, the more we realize that perhaps some of the advice being dished out and commonly dished out even by commentators to this day may not be on the button. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I would be very leery of what commentators speak on, and a lot of magazines tell you about what's important in the world of golf. It's a lot of time I think it's counterintuitive. I think they're 180 degrees off. But yeah, definitely there's a lot of, and even when I was coaching collegiately for 20 years, a lot of the things I believed then, I've come to find out in the last 4 or 5 years, I was completely wrong. I always say I'm a better coach today than I was 5 years ago, just because now I understand all of this performance data and what it really takes to get the best out of a player.
And Brian, I think it's fair to say as well that when we go back to the guys I watched growing up and playing, your Jack Nicklaus, I would have seen I suppose the end of his career into the 5 Europeans, Faldo, Seve, Lyle, Woosnam, and Langer, and then and on and so on into Tiger. Those guys had figured it out, even if they didn't know they had figured it out. Is that a fair comment?
No, I believe so. I think the best in the world figure it out. They might not be able to tell you exactly what's happening, but they know their game and they understand what they need to do to succeed. And I think the neat part about golf is not everybody will do it the exact same. And the danger is trying to be somebody else. What you've got to learn is understand who you are, what your goals are, and then what you need to achieve to reach that next level. I think the olden guys had it down. They knew what they were doing, and they would not be deterred. I think I would love to see what Jack would have done with data science and really been able to break down an actual golf course, show strengths and weaknesses, where he needs to be, percentage, highest percentage shot areas. He was a savant, and if you could have given him a little bit more data, I don't know what would happen. Maybe a lot of those second places would have been firsts.
Yeah, I certainly don't think he would have been sharing much of this stuff with his competitors, would he?
Oh, I guarantee he wouldn't.
So let's get started here. I mean, before we do get going, I guess the great thing we can say to anybody who's not perhaps playing on the tour just yet is there's going to be some scope here for improvement, right?
Yeah, very much so. Our presentation days, we're going to talk anywhere from a double-digit high handicapper all the way down to a scratch player, and kind of give you a good sense of what it takes to, again, like we say, to achieve your next level.
Okay. So if we were to use the following statistics as predictors of score, and the key here is it's the predictors of score. This is just to get you guys thinking. We're giving you 10 options, and if you want to quickly, whether you want to pop something in the chat or whether you just want to kind of take note yourself at home of what you think would allow us to have a good prediction of a score somebody shot at any given day in the golf course. We'll give you a minute or so to have a look at those. And as I say, if you want to pop something in the chat, you're welcome to, or alternatively, just have a little think yourself for a moment.
Yeah, look at really for the top 3. So look at that list of 10 performance stats you see all the time thrown around golf channels and everything. Just kind of think of what are the top 3. If we were going to predict your score, what I need to see to get a good sense of what just happened today.
Getting somebody highlighting scrambling there.
It's a pretty smart group.
Looks to be. Well, I think I know some of these people. I might coach some of these people. Okay, so let's have a little look-see, shall we? They're the top 3, Brian, right?
Yeah, for score predictors. If I can find out at the end of your round how many greens you hit, what your total putts were, and what your scrambling percentage rate, I can predict your score to about 88% efficiency. Now, I can't, if crazy happens, I can't judge crazy if we made a couple quads or something, but just by those 3 main factors, I can really anticipate how you performed.
Brian, can you just maybe give people a sense of what green in regulation would be, and also scrambling proximity?
Yeah. So greens and regulations would be how many greens you hit of the 18 holes you played. How many did you hit in regulation, which is par -2, if you want to think of it that way. So kind of the benchmark, if you wanted to be a scratch player, we have a couple players in here like my goal is to be scratch. That number of greens needs to really be around 12. And then as we kind of exit out, if you're about a 20 handicapper, you're looking about 3 or 4 greens. So again, that's just actually hitting the green. And that's a great influencer on score, because ideally if we 2-putt, we get out of there with a par. Scrambling proximities inside of GameForge, we track something called P6. It's a proximity of it. Basically, when you miss the green in regulation, par -1, how many times do I chip it within 6 feet? So basically, it's a 6-foot radius or 12-foot diameter. That is a big target around the hole. I think a big misconception, and you probably hear this with your commentators and golf magazines, is I want to chip everything to 3 feet. 3 feet, if I get to 3 feet, I make 98% of my putts. I'll always scramble great. Yes, but the best in the world, looking on tour, they only average 2 lie conditions and distances where they average 3 feet or better. And that's chipping from the fringe from 0 to 10 yards and chipping from the fairway 0 to 10 yards. Everything else is outside of 3 feet. So again, just kind of starting to understand performance and understanding of golf. If I can chip it within a 12-foot diameter of the hole, I'm doing my job. So for some of you out there, this might be a completely different premise, that a good chip would be, again, to get it within a 12-foot diameter of the hole. And then from that, I'm inside of 6 feet. And then we'll know conversion rates anywhere from 88% being a scratch tour player, all the way down to probably in the 30s and 40% for higher handicaps. But again, it starts to give you that concept of how to improve in areas that I can move to my next level. And of course, total putts are just total putts, right? The beauty of total putts is don't fall for the outliers. Anytime I present this, I always hear, well, I had 29 putts and I shot 88. Yeah, you probably hit 2 greens. I got you. Or, I shot 69 and I had 37 putts. Well, you might have holed out. You might have done some crazy stuff. I get you. So the outliers are outliers, but predominantly, most people are going to 2-putt, maybe 3-putt on occasions, maybe 1-putt on occasions. But total putts, again, is a good barometer a good performance piece that spans across ball striking, putting, and gives you a really good idea of what happened during the day.
Yeah, and just on the greens and regulation, easy way to calculate this is if you're an 18 handicapper, you got an extra shot per hole. So a par 4, you want to reach that in 3 shots, par 5 and 4 shots, and a par 3. If you're on that green in 2 shots, you're giving yourself a great chance of scoring efficiently on that day. Sorry.
Oh yeah, and if you think about it, if you use this for performance wise, if a lot of people don't take stats, if you just started tracking these today or whenever you can get back out on the golf course, once you start tracking these numbers, that concept of if I can understand what my putting looks like, what my greens look like, and what my scrambling look like, that sets up my path to get better. So inside of GameForge, we're this huge data company. We got all these bells and whistles. But at our core, it's these 3 things. So I would tell all players listening to this, if you could take these 3 things, start tracking this, you'll really get a good concept of where you need to improve and how you can start shaving off. So you go from an 18 down to a 12. Again, what does that next level look like? What do I need to accomplish? And let's start setting a path to get there.
Right, and Brian, something I guess we should say is if you hit all 18 greens in regulation relative to your handicap, but every first putt you face is 50 to 70 feet, you're probably not going to have a great day on the golf course.
It's going to put a lot of pressure on your putter. You could survive that way, but you're not going to make many birdies. And I imagine 3 putts and others will show up. So there's a proximity value inside of greens, which is important, but that's kind of your next level, right? First, we got to get you hitting greens and get you comfortable hitting there. And then once we start getting there, then we can start talking proximities and what it looks like to actually make birdie and where I need to go from where you're at. But yeah, to me, just the green percentage is really the key. And then for the lower handicap guys and gals that are listening, now we're starting to look at what are my proximities? How many shots do I hit within 20 feet? What is my conversion rate there? Kind of, I think one of the most fascinating data points we have in all of GameForge is birdies don't matter until you shoot 75. Until you start averaging 75, birdies really plateau at about 1.5. Doesn't really move much, but right at about 75, it skyrockets. So to get below 75, we got to start making 2, 3, 4, 5 birdies per round. And bogeys start out really high and drop, and then they plateau right at about 75. They start to plateau at about 2.5 to 3 bogeys. So again, inside of training, the most exciting part, if you're a low handicapper, we've got to figure out, if I'm 75 or better, I got to make more birdies more times than not. And vice versa. If I'm a higher handicapper, I've got to start figuring out how to get rid of bogeys. And I got to start figuring out how to get rid of noise. Noise we call in the system is just shots that are just random, doubles, triples. Don't know what it's really called, but I was 6 over on that hole. Get rid of those holes. And then that's how we can start improving scoring.
Great. So, would you like to go and play a hole, Brian?
Yeah, let's do it.
And you want to take the ladies' tees or why?
I can play. I don't know what is 152 meters in feet or yards.
You're 167 yards. This is the 3rd hole in Evanstown, folks. This is the aerial view of the 3rd hole. We're just going to talk you through. You get 3 words. We'll talk you through maybe how different handicap players could and possibly should approach this hole and ways perhaps to maximize the efficiency of your approach so that the scoring element becomes a little bit easier. Brian, let's start with the gents tee box. It's 167 yards. It's 152 meters. Let's say we've got an 18 handicap gent on the tee. Let's put the pin in that front right section because that's where it would often be. So just where my cursor is right now, if you can see that. Mm-hmm. And then if I do just momentarily go forward, you get you'll get a view here. So the pin will be tucked behind these trees, okay?
Gotcha.
All right, let's reverse engineer this golf hole.
Well, rule number 1, don't hit in a hazard. On par 3s, rule number 1 is don't hit in a hazard. Hazard here would be your sand shot, your bunker shots. So rule number 1 for no matter what handicap you're at, for the most part, stay away from a hazard. So we want to come up with a game plan where we, 1, don't end up in the bunker. Self-explanatory, but most big numbers inside of par 3s really come from hazards. So again, that understanding that concept is it seems logical for many, but for some, they're like, huh, really? That would be rule number one. Now, pin tuck in the front right, there's a lot of options, right? Depends on shot shape, depends on ability. Do I cut it? Do I fade it? Do I slice it? Do I not know where it goes? So those are all pieces that you kind of got to figure out. I'm assuming you can control the ball somewhat. And ideally, if the pin's in the front right, we have the trees kind of blocking us. So really, the center of the green and left is your safe play for a higher handicapper. But where does that put pressure on the system? You're gonna have a long putt. But ideally, again, if we're putting and have that option, putting is always the best way to become a better scrambler is not having to chip. So anytime that we can hit that green, so really the concept for a higher handicapper is, can I get to the green more than anything? And so that again, even if I have to be further from the hole, again, birdie's not that important as a high handicapper. We love them when they happen, but they're not going to show up very often. So it's more risk mitigation right there. So we want to kind of aim away, ideally, from that front right pin condition, center, left. Because even at the worst case, we take a 3-putt from the left side of the green. We're walking away with bogey, and if you're an 18 handicap, you're right on par.
Sure, and so the term we would use, Brian, as coaches is short-sighting yourself when a pin is tucked on the right-hand side and you miss perhaps to the right-hand side, and now you've got this unbelievably delicate chip from some rough grass. The back section of that green is running about 6 to 7% aim point wise, so you've just left yourself an absolutely nightmare shot and could easily walk off with a much higher number than 4, right?
Yeah, anytime you're short-sighted, you got to remember that the best in the world, from really deep rough on really hard chipping conditions, they're only going to get it within, they're going to average 6 to 10 feet, and that's best in the world. So that concept again, if I'm a higher handicapper, in the big data of golf, I want to stay away from those shots. Now, a low handicap player being in that front bunker might not be a bad play. If I'm a good bunker player, as kind of your understanding of your game and you understand strengths and weaknesses, I actually converted about 65% out of a bunker. So for me I'm actually better to land in the bunker than I am in the rough, because I have better control and have better ability. And I just know that from my game. So for me, dumping it in the bunker is not a horrible thing. I got a good chance to make par, and I can be a little more aggressive. But I can control spin. I can control stuff out of bunker, where rough, not so much. So a high handicapper is going to look at this hole a little bit different. If they're a cut player, aim center, let it leak towards the hole. That would be great. If you're a draw player, this is a danger hole, right? We don't want to start the ball way right and hope it's going to, one, we got trees in the way. Two is we don't want to overdraw and end up, it doesn't draw and we end up short-sighted like we just talked about. So, again, a draw player is going to probably steer away from the flag stick a little bit, draw it to the center of the green, be happy. But again, understand it all. Again, all course strategy really boils down to what are you capable of, and if you understand what you're capable of and you play the percentages, it's like blackjack at a casino. As long as my odds, that's the only time the odds are basically even. If I understand my odds, I got a chance. If I hope for that 1 in a million shot, it's going to happen 1 out of a million. It means there's a lot of times it didn't happen. So we've got to figure out what just happened. So really, strategy and performance, really the only way you can understand that is you got to understand your performance. And if you're not keeping data and you don't understand what's happening, it's really hard to make good, sound decisions on the golf course.
Sure. And I think it's certainly worth taking note after a round of golf, the holes that really hurt you in terms of the decisions maybe you've made that, hey, that was a 7 out of nowhere. Or, I mean, this is a relatively manageable par 3. That said, 167 yards, it's probably 4-iron hybrid for a lot of gents off that tee box. Not really a club you'd be attacking a pin with anyway, Brian.
No. And I'm a firm believer on par 3s. You got to come up with a strategy to try to save par. In the pantheon of making birdies, par 5 is number 1 by a mile. par 4 is about even, and par 3s you tend to average. A scratch player is going to be a little bit above par overall. So again, that concept of par 3s, and a lot of designers lull you to sleep. They add distance. They make golf courses really difficult and long by making par 3s just really, really tough. So, but again, like I said, it always boils down to what are your abilities, understand them, and now I can go attack the hole. And everybody's 18 handicappers. Can I get there in 2 shots? Scratch players, can I get there in 1 and have a chance at birdie? Can I hit it within 20 feet, 25 feet to have a chance? And again, it really boils down to you, the player, understanding where you are and finding a good coach that can help navigate you when you're on that golf course to make better decisions.
If you find one of those coaches, will you let me know?
I'm looking in Ireland right now. Okay. I'll let you know.
I can make some recommendations. Let's move forward to the ladies tee box for a second, Brian. This is a golf hole a lot of the ladies do talk to me about, and the challenge is the green is so narrow that a good shot got in here with a little, with a slightly lower trajectory. It's just going to shoot through the back of the green into this rough, and that's leaving a nightmare chip. I always believe that there's a bit of space over here in this left-hand side, which, as you're saying, if you're on the green in 2 and you 2-putt and make 4, that's not the worst tactics to employ. Would you agree with that?
No, I completely agree with that. It's all, the math mind. It's all probabilities. What gives me my best chance to score? And, the hard part is there's ego, there's people watching, there's a lot of factors that are forcing you maybe to make decisions that might not be in your best interest. But really what you've got to be able to do as a player is come up with what works best. And if that's bailing to the left, chipping to the middle of the green and having a 15, 20 footer to save par, it's a par putt, where opposed to hitting the back of the green, chipping it and running to the front of the green and not really maybe having to chip again. That concept of it's not putting me in position to score. And I think a lot of times in golf, we get fixated on what it looks like and not what we put on the scorecard. I know collegiately it was a nightmare. When you watch young players attacking golf courses, you're just like, what were you thinking? And they're like, well, I technically wasn't. Again, but that concept of is you've got to put what's in your best interest. And yeah, if I being in that left side, having that nice little shortcut right over there, I think is a great area to be. And it's a much simpler chip. You have room, and you might screw up and hit it real close and tap it in for par.
Hey, how bad?
Not bad.
I think it's that ability to almost reverse engineer a hole and figure out, okay, well, I could make a par if I do this, but I could also take a 10 versus if I do this 9 times out of 10, I'll actually make a 5, or in this hole a 4. That's kind of what we're looking for people to do on golf courses, and realize that, as you say, you mightn't be hitting the wonder shots the whole way around. You might walk off and go, hey, I didn't do anything spectacular, but I've just shot the best score I've shot this year.
Very much so.
And that's okay.
Well, that's what we're trying to do, isn't it?
Yeah. All righty. If anybody has any questions at this point in time, folks, just pop them into the chat. We're going to go and play another golf hole, and this one is rather nice.
Gareth, I'll give you a funny par 3 story. When I was a collegiate coach, we had a player. We played at a hole that was surrounded by water. And the practice round, she dumped 3 balls in the water trying to attack different pins. The first round we played, she dumped it in the water, went to the drop zone, made bogey. Second day, she knocked it in the water, went to the drop zone, knocked it in. Third day, I'm standing on the tee box. She goes, what should I hit? I go, how far is it to the drop zone? And she thought I was kidding. I go, literally, you've gotten up and down for bogey from the drop zone the last 2 days. She goes, it's about a 35, 40-yard chip, and there's a big space. I go, all right, hit it there. And to her credit, she hit it there, hit it up to the green, made par. So again, it wasn't the prettiest way to make par, but it was in her best interest on how to attack that hole for what she was bringing to the golf course.
Could she reach that hole comfortably, Brian, or was it a stretch for her?
She should have been able to reach it comfortably, but for some reason, I don't know what it was. It wasn't an easy hole, but it wasn't as hard as she was making it over those practice rounds in those first 2 days.
Well, this is a little interesting aside in that. So what we're saying here is if somebody has, let's say, a little mental blip on a golf hole, and particularly if you're playing the same course all the time, the way it's like a hole can get under your skin and you start to go, oh, no, not this again. you know, what you've just said there is key. Do something different. Do anything different.
Yeah.
Don't keep hitting in the water because you feel you can reach the green. Mix it up and try anything to get a different number on the board.
We totally did that. We had one of our players at our home course. It was a par 3 with water in front, big drop down. Visually was hard to, and she lost every qualifier to do this one hole. This par 3, she'd walk away with 7s and 8s. So I gave her a small bucket of balls. I said, go to that hole and play it 30 different ways and figure out a way not to do that again. And to her credit, she sat there with a small bucket of balls and hit it all over the place, thinking of different pin locations. And she was able to get rid of that anomaly of a bad hole because the look of it was just bad. It took 60 golf balls, but she did it.
Yeah, and funny point, the thing I think a lot of people listening won't realize is we see this at the various highest level. We talk to tournament players and they go, man, that tee shot on 10, I just can't figure it out, or it doesn't suit my eye. We're going to see it in Riviera this week, 10th, that drivable par 4. We're going to see some big numbers there because guys just can't get their head around taking that green on, but they'll feel compelled to take it on because that's what the rest of the field is doing. So this exists from beginner right up to the highest level of golfer in the world. What the greats do is not repeat the mistakes.
Yep.
They're okay hitting it to 60 feet and trying to 2-putt for a par and get out of jail, right?
Very much so. And to kind of hit home, we speak with touring professionals all the way to juniors to amateur. Like literally we consult with about 7 or 8 tour players inside of GameForge. They have the same fears, the same sometimes irrational feelings on certain holes. And it's our job inside of the data to say, hey, here's what the field does. Here's how you're doing it the exact same as them. But what we can do is do this to help you get past that. Maybe it's a sticky point with an iron. Maybe you lay back further, go further ahead. Maybe it's, when a pin's at a certain location. Maybe we know if we attack this quadrant of the green, you still guarantee par. Birdie might be less, but we can guarantee par, but it takes away that fear. So I think, again, what data and what understanding your game and kind of the statistics behind it can really free you up and give you that sense of how I can be different. Because, again, all players, and I'm the 4th hole at my home club, I still haven't figured it out. I've been a member now for 7 months, and I've hit wedge shots, short, long. It's a big raised green. Like I'm still trying to figure out, and I play differently every time from off the tee, trying different angles, and I haven't cracked it yet. But I'll let you know.
I'm sure your 12-year-old your 12-year-old son Gavin will figure out first and tell you what to do. Hey, Dad, do this.
I guarantee it.
One of the things, Brian, that just comes to mind here, we've got so much in sports psychology and golf now, and the gurus and the mind people, and they're always going on about one shot at a time and stay in the present and present. But when you think about what we're saying here, you almost need to go to the green in your mind and go, well, how do I get there in 2 shots, 3 shots, 4 shots inside 20 feet? And then come backwards from that to whatever you're about to undertake, be that your tee shot, your second shot, or your third shot. And if you stay in that one shot at a time mantra, you could make some poor decisions unknowingly, I guess.
Oh, very much. You got to understand our sole purpose is getting it as close to the hole as we can to make the putt as easy as it is. That's as easy as we can ask, right? So what can I do to access that pin? Where do I need to come from the fairway? Whether it's my second, third, or fourth shot, where do I need to be to access that to the best of my ability? What distance am I really good at? I want to be roughly in this zone, and then just kind of work your way back. And that starts making your decisions for you. If we're just reacting by hitting shots and reacting what we just did, we're in complete emotional state the entire round. We're kind of giving up control, and we're just reacting all day long, which sometimes it works really well. But I think there needs to be a process and an understanding of what I'm trying to do. And I think the neatest thing, if you go to the PGA Tour website and you watch they have the hole by hole and they show everybody's shots on the same hole. Every tour player plays it the same. If you watch them, the winner does it better. That's the big difference. They don't, everyone doesn't play down the right side of the fairway and the winner goes down the left side. It's not what happens. They all play the hole generally the same. The best players in the world just do it a little bit better. So at that level, they kind of know I need to be here to access this. They all do it. So there is a process for those players. They're just not winging it out there. They figured out this is the best way for me to access it, and they all do it relatively the same. So for a lot of you listening to this that haven't put out a game plan, write up a game plan and say, I'm gonna play 9 holes next week. Here's kind of the way that I want to go around the golf course. And then at the end of your 9 holes, sit down and go, where was my plan good? Where was it weak? Adjust it. And then just keep doing it. You play the course enough, it becomes ingrained. You don't have to worry about it. But again, just kind of having that reflection and understanding, it's a great way to play golf.
Yeah, and there's certainly, I think, as I say, you've been at Evanstown with me. We've got small greens, very aggressive sloping. There are certain places you really don't want to miss because the chip shot, going back to what you were saying about proximity, the best in the world at times around Evanstown would probably chip at the 20 feet and be quite happy with the result. So you've got to figure out where definitely not to be within that game plan as well, right?
But very much so. And here's a great question over in the chat that most people are so worried about the shot, they forget the premise of golf. The premise of golf is getting the ball as close as I can to the hole, not worrying about my technique, but can I be good enough and can I create a strategy that benefits me, that I can make errors but still puts me in good positions to score well. You know, again, I think the golf world is wonderful. I love golf instruction. Well, I don't. A lot of it's really screwed up. They get so fixated on technique and I can solve everything with the perfect swing. That's not golf. Golf is playing a game. And again, that strategy component, I don't see enough. So I with all my players, I definitely do a lot of walking lessons. Like we're out on the golf course, you know, if we make an error, we'll drop another ball, fix it. But I would recommend going out with your coach, taking Gareth out there and say, hey, let's go walk 6 holes and let's kind of walk through this. We got the member coming up. I want to make sure I'm doing this right. And just kind of getting that feedback. But yeah, golf is much more than technique. If technique was all it was, all the great swings on the range, over in the range net, hitting great shots, it doesn't transfer over on the hole number 1 very often. So strategy to me is it's something you can control. It's something you can understand, and it gives you that control during a round, right? I'm not in fear. I'm not in emotion. I've set up a plan. Now can I go attack my plan? And it allows me to have wins throughout the day, opposed to, you know, judging everything off of a whim or a reaction.
Yeah, isn't that the difference between acting and reacting, whereby, you know, the golf course is basically slapping you around for 4.5 hours because you have let it be in charge, versus you going out with a game plan of sorts. And just to say, folks, we're not saying that every shot could come off as a game plan was laid out, but you should have some game plan that allows you to kind of stay comfortable on the golf course.
Yeah. And let's go ahead.
I'll go to this question in a second. One thing I want to touch upon, Brian, you're a huge fan of swing coaches, as you just alluded to. One of the things within an efficient motion is it doesn't waste energy. It's very, very, least moving parts, smallest amount of space, blah, blah, blah. And when we think about efficiency for playing the game, really it's about how do I get there in the least amount of shots, cleanly and simply, and just have this lovely opportunity to have a straightforward chip shot or a couple of straightforward putts.
No, exactly. And I think a lot of that has to do, again, if you have a swing that produces a shot, let's say I average 210, 220. I don't need to play the very back tee boxes because I'm not designed to play that golf course. So I think a lot of times too, ego gets involved. We play the wrong tee boxes and we make the game a lot more difficult than it needs to be. I'm getting older. I'm pushing 50. I'm losing. I'm not on the blue tee boxes anymore. I'm up in whites, and I'm trying to convince my son to let me play on the senior tees once I turn 50. But again, it's understanding that I need to adapt to what my shot is. I'm averaging 260 off the tee. I can play 65, 6,800 and survive. But you put me at 7,400, I'm dead. I'm hitting nothing but 3 woods and long irons into every hole. And that's not what golf is designed to be. The architect designs the golf course to be played a certain way. And he gives you different tee boxes so you can actually play the golf course as it is designed, and he's giving you options of tee boxes. So don't let ego and that drive you from enjoying this great game of golf.
Yeah, so question coming here, Brian. If reverse engineering of a particular hole does not become the reality, what do you do then? I guess
it's the number one thing, the number one skill in golf: adapt.
There you go. If, you know, if the first shot doesn't go as planned, your plan is now gone. So you better come up with a new plan. And every time that plan has, going back to what we're saying and really repeating here, it's got to be, okay, I'm out of position. I'm probably going to take a bogey or double bogey. Well, make a double, make a bogey. Give yourself a chance at bogey, make double. Don't let that miscue turn into a 10, 12, a blip, whatever is the case. So you can real-time adapt and amend your plan as you go, but it's good to have one rather than reacting all the time, right?
Very much so. And in part of the adaptation might, how can I get back onto my plan? It could be that simple as, you know, instead of being at 150, can I get to 160 and I'm roughly in my plan? Or can I, you know, so again, you don't scrap it just for scrapping's sake, but you've got to adapt. You've got to figure out what are the lie conditions, what's actually happening, and what can I do? And again, you know, the beauty of golf is it's such a interconnected sport, from lies to wins to everything changes, every shot, every hole. You know, that adaptiveness is key. And I think that's where the best players in the world, I think, really separate, or even the best players at the club. They have the ability to go, okay, well, it's not ideal, but I have this shot and I can still make this score. You know, it's not like I need to hit this shot now. I need to make birdie or make bogey or whatever. Like they figure out, here I am. This is what's happening. I'm going to adapt and kind of, I'm going to change my plan, but I'm making a plan from that point. But yeah, adaptiveness to me that's the beauty of golf. You know, it's funny. We're the only game that we're not reactionary. Every sport on earth is reactionary, but us. We have time to make a game plan. We have time to think through all the different ramifications. But you know, a majority of our esteemed golfers out there play it as a reactionary sport, which, you know, good and bad.
Yeah, well, if you've got time to think, maybe actually think rather than be a little bit headless and reacting, as you say, to whatever's going on around you. I know a question came in earlier in the week with regards to alignment lines on the golf ball, and should I or should I not? I'm happy to say it depends. I'm not fudging my answer. It would really be a case of, have you tested without, have you tested with, and can you over the course of several rounds say there is a noticeable difference, and if that is positive, continue with the lines on the golf ball. If it doesn't seem to be, I see no reason to continue. Anything you would add, Brian?
No, again, it's just, if you track performance, if I make a change, did it work? If I make a change and it doesn't work, the change is not worth doing. So kind of what Gareth said, if you kind of track it and you say, hey, I've improved X amount of shots on my short putts or whatever, go with it, love it. If you don't see improvement or you get worse, don't make it work. Just say, oh, that didn't work. Let's amend the plan on getting better. So again, I think that's really by player and really boils down to, do they perform better?
Yeah. Another question, Brian, that came in before we came on air was with regards to distance. And the question was, should I attempt to enhance my distance off a tee, perhaps? So you know, maybe I've got a shorter shot to the green, or should I attempt perhaps to enhance my distance with my mid irons, particularly the gent mentioned hybrid and 6-iron? One thing I guess we have to state here is that needs to be a fairly cautious approach, in that you could potentially increase distance and start shooting a lot worse scores, right? You've got to be able to increase distance but retain dispersion. So you don't want to start hitting the ball further and further offline, but my God, is it going far? Because the further offline is, the worse you're going to score. So it's getting that balance between, yes, I am actually hitting the ball further, but I'm hitting it further with the same amount of control. Ideally, I'll actually hit it further and some things get cleaned up and I have enhanced control. Anything you would add?
What we kind of found in the data, I'm sorry about that feedback. I live in the country. My internet can get really slow. What we found with the data was some of the best players, from tour players to collegians to really high-end juniors, amateurs, is at about 100 yards equals about 180. If you're, you know, if they start thinking of distance-wise, about 160, 170 in the fairway equals 100 yards in the rough. So that's kind of the equation for longer hitters. You hear on TV, misconception is, oh, the farther I can hit it down there, I'm hitting away. If you can hit it within 50 yards, yes, you change the game. But if you don't hit it within 50 yards, it's actually in your best interest to be able to hit fairways. And it kind of goes back to what Gareth said. We tell players, really good players, that for every 10 yards you gain, you cannot lose roughly more than about 5 yards, and 5 yards of dispersion. So you've really got to keep the ability to hit at target needs to stay relatively similar as you're adding length. If that equation's broken, don't do it. We just spoke with a tour player the other day. He just got a 1 inch longer driver. He was like, "Oh, I'm hitting so much further," and we went through the numbers, and we're like, "Don't hit it." It's actually a net negative for you. He didn't hit it, and he actually won an event on the U.S. Tour. So again, that concept of is a lot of times we chase bad information. I would also encourage the player to think of tee boxes again. I think he said he was about 210. And we can go to the next slide. I think he said he's about 210 off the tee box. You'd be playing, right around 6,000, 6,200 is a great distance to be playing at that distance. Now, if you start to pick up distance, you start going 220, 230. Now we're going to start looking at 6,400. We're going to start stretching the golf course out. But again, if you're averaging 200 off the tee, 210, you should be playing right around 58 to 6,200, because that's going to give you the opportunities to play good golf. That means that I can hit a 200-yard tee ball. Now I have 150 yards in. My par threes are 340 yards instead of 400. So again, that concept of just making sure that you're playing the golf course that gives you the ability to score. And I think that's the beauty of our game, is you can control distances to make it a fun, enjoyable experience, instead of being slapped around for 18 holes. Nobody likes that.
No, and Brian, it's so true, because one of the last games of golf I had, I was in Donegal before all of this kicked off, and I was able to play a game of golf with my dad, and I'm back on the furthest back tee boxes. He's a couple of boxes forward, and there was a junior golfer with us, and he's way forward again, and yet all three of us had a really enjoyable day out, because we played that which was most relevant to our abilities at that point in time. There is a question come in that I'm going to hand over to you, because it's asking basically, if you were prepping to play a golf course you're not familiar with, what would you recommend?
Yeah, so to me, ideally, get on the golf course if you can play it. The best way to learn a golf course is go play it, hit multiple shots, really understand that. If you have data collection, if there's a service out there, we at GameForge create dossiers on golf courses that we have information on, and we can show you how people have played the golf courses. So there's always the data side, so you can learn a lot. And you can go to Google Earth. I think Google Earth is brilliant. You can kind of go on Google Earth, call it the golf course, and you can look at you can draw lines, you can draw angles, you can create a really good game plan without ever stepping on the golf course. Collegiately, we did that all the time. We call it Google Earth. We think of each individual player. We know their dispersions off the tee. They're 2%, 5%, 7% miss, and we would actually lay up, and we'd actually design 18 holes how to get around the golf course that would suit them for different pins. So you can actually play a lot of golf courses with mapping. So to me, that's probably the best way if you can't get on the golf course. Ideally, go play the golf course. Even better, play with a member. If you can go to another course and play with a member that's been there forever, and he can tell you you got to watch out for this tee box, or you got to watch out for when they put the pin here, because it's death if you do this or that. So again, there's no better way to train and be ready to actually go play it. But don't forget about technology. Google Earth. I think you snapped a couple of these shots with Google Earth, you can completely map out an entire golf course.
Yeah, that shot right now of the 9th hole at Pebble is Google Earth. Brian, did you say that somebody's going to tell you exactly what not to do? Would that not be introducing some negative thinking to your game?
So I'm a firm believer. I want to know where I need to be and where I don't need to be.
It's okay to know where you shouldn't go, as long as you know where you're going, right?
Exactly. Like I can't, like on this hole right here, I can't go right. Yeah. I know that. I can lie to myself and say it's okay to go. No, it's not. I can't go right. So my target is X. So I'm going to aim, I don't hit it far enough. I'm going to aim at the middle of the left bunker, and I hit a little cut, and it's going to end up in the middle of the fairway. I'm happy. So I'm not a firm believer. I'm not scared of saying I can't do something, but I always reaffirm, I need to be here. My target is here, and I know my shot, and I'm going to go hit this shot. Players used to get mad at me all the time when I caddied for them. I'm like, you can't go there. They're like, don't tell me that. I'm like, it's obvious. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the 9th hole here in Pebble, if you go far enough to the right, you have the potential to miss California.
Mhm.
And thereby you're missing a continent in essence, I guess. So, and that cart path on the left-hand side, whilst it mightn't be ideal to be up there in that rough on the left, you can still scramble and get something down that golf hole from there. But a lot of that is to do with where you place your attention, right? And that it's okay to know where you shouldn't go and temporarily go, well, I don't want to go over there. Now, where am I putting my attention with regards to where I do want to go?
Always.
Yeah.
It goes back to that game plan. I know where I need to be to allow myself to be able to play my best. And yeah, hitting it out of the rocks or off the sand is not exactly in my best interest.
For your golf clubs.
Or me trying to get up and down that hill.
Folks, if you have any more questions, you might get them into us. We're kind of coming towards the end of our presentation. It's just that gives you a good overview of that golf hole. It's amazing. The camber from left to right is huge, and you know, for the golfer playing this hole very quickly, Brian, they don't even need to hit driver. They just need to get something here because they'll get 50, 60 yards of roll with the right shot. Yeah, and if that's a favorite hybrid, get that hybrid out and hit it twice and get yourself within 100 yards, and suddenly you've got a scoring opportunity in one of the hardest golf holes, not just in Pebble Beach, really in the world. It's a very tough golf hole.
No, and kind of what I hit on a little bit earlier is 70 yards. 60, 70 yards is what the fairway's worth. So if I can hit a shot that's in the fairway, it's worth about 60 to 70 yards in the rough. So that concept of hitting fairways is important. Distance is great. I'll never say distance is not great. Having distance, but again, understanding that if I'm in the fairway, I have a better chance of playing my next shot and controlling things a little bit better than I do when I miss the fairway.
I'm being asked here if I would consider offering a mapping service for Edmonton Golf Club linked to Adaptability. Absolutely is the answer to that question. That's something that whether I can look at and see if there's an appetite for it. Great question. Anything else?
And Gareth, get a bunch of your members in GameForge, and we're adding some strategy stats. We can actually build a dossier for your home course and actually show you percentages and where people play. Shameless plug, but you know, I had to do it.
Brian, I wasn't ready for that. I have a slide somewhere for you to plug.
I always make sure I get my plug in. Come on.
Just quickly, this is an exciting thing that's coming up. And indeed, some of the members of Edmonton are going to be able to get involved in this, but the league, the GameForge League, but it also does show course lengths. And really, if you play the appropriate course length relative to the distance you hit off the tee box, golf is just a whole different experience, Brian, right?
Oh, very much. If, you know, I said I can play with Tiger Woods if I'm able to hit from the tee boxes. That gives me, you know, kind of inside of GameForge, we say you should have roughly 7 to 8 opportunities to hit it 20 feet and in throughout your day. So if I can give myself the ability to have that number, just like Tiger's going to do from a much longer distance, but if we can kind of match that, I can play with him. Now, if you put me back at 7,600 yards, I break 90, I'd be giddy and laughing and having a great old time. But that concept of is that, again, I can only, you know, golf is designed to be played a certain way. Let's go ahead and set the course. So yeah, we have what's called the league coming up, hopefully. So you guys can actually battle with members, bring out, you know, battle outside of your club and actually come to the States and battle us in the States. So we're going to try to create an international league. That'll be a lot of fun, but really designed off of a setup where you can go and compete and actually compete and set up a golf course for you to have fun. And actually, instead of giving you shots, we're going to create a golf course that you get to go compete is really what we're trying to do.
Just to clarify, folks, those course lengths you're seeing at the bottom of the screen are in yards, not meters. Questions come in here, Brian, which is actually kind of interesting because it's something you and I had an experience with a tour player. I think it goes back to August. You contacted me, and this player was being told that so the question is, do you have to use visualization after you've reverse engineered a shot? You kind of reached out to me and said, hey, I got this player. She's got a sports psychologist. And he was absolutely adamant she had to visualize. And I went back and I said, Brian, if that girl's got aphanesthesia, which means she can't create visual pictures, she's going to have a really tough time on the golf course because she's going to be standing over the ball trying to visualize something and literally can't. So you can have a plan for the golf shot, you might be able to visualize a shot, but it's definitely not a case that you must visualize the shot. What you should do is ensure that you feel comfortable and ready before you step into strike.
Amen. I can't visualize at all. I've tried. I've been told by countless people. I'm like, give me a point. I know roughly shape of what my ball is going to look like. You give me a point, I know my shape. I can make the shot happen. But I struggle in mind's eye being able to physically see a golf ball move. It's not what I do. So that advice for a lot of years really was a struggle for me because I couldn't do it. And I would tell people I couldn't do it, and they'd look at me and go, "Why can't you do it?" No, I don't know. I don't know.
Because you can't.
Because I can't.
Yeah. Just another questions come in here. How to align the thought process with pre-shot routine, when to start sizing up strategy, target alignment, clear mind, etc. Okay, well, one of the things I would definitely say here is golfers are too aware of their golf ball between shots. They're kind of looking where their ball is, and they're already going, my God, how am I going to extract myself from this mess? Or what am I going to do next? Or am I on track to shoot my best score ever? There needs to be closure after the last shot. And then when you get to your golf ball, you start to go into preparation mode. You gather the relevant information. You make a decision. You do all of that away from the golf ball. And when all of that is clear and you feel comfortable, you're now executing rehearsals. And then finally, you step into strike. And so there should be clear boundaries there as to, I don't begin collecting information until probably, let's say, 5 yards, 10 yards before my ball. I do all of my information gathering, an assessment away in a little area away from my golf ball. I rehearse there, and then when I step into execution, I am an athlete. There is a target. I'm going to send this ball to that target, and you need to switch off after you have executed and have that moment of, this is done. So you've kind of got preparation, rehearsal, execution, closure. That's kind of your 4 things that you need to do, and really not coming up the fairway. Get in the vicinity of the golf ball before you begin that. Brian, anything you would add?
I think it's brilliant. I said adaptation is number 1. Number 2, major trait to play great golf is acceptance. I just hit a shot. I got to accept it. It's where it is. Now, as I'm walking back up, like Gareth said, you're going to go through that same process, but I can't allow that shot to sit there and fester. You know, I hit it goofy. Okay. Now I'm going to be spectacular. Now I'm going to go be spectacular, and I'm going to make the shot or something along that lines. So I would say you nailed it right there. That acceptance piece, saying, okay, this is what I am. These are my conditions. I'm going to assess, create my plan, execute, accept.
The first time Gabe caddied for me, Brian, and you know Gabe, you've had a beer with him here in Ireland. We walked off the first tee of the dare, and he started talking to me about my tee shot, and I stopped him right in the fairway and put my hand on his chest, and I said, Gabe, ABG. And he goes, what? And I went, anything but golf. All right. And he goes, what? Well, blah, blah, blah. I went, no, anything but golf.
Right.
That was a rule for between every golf shot. The deal was anything but golf. And he's like, man, all we ever do is talk about golf on the golf course. I went, exactly. That's 5 hours of playing golf. That's hard.
I'm ADD ridden, so I have thousands of conversations going on in my head, and almost none of them have to do with golf.
Questions come in here. We often hear to forget the scorecard when playing. I've never found that possible. Is that an issue? I hate to do this, but it depends. The answer to that is it's not an issue if it doesn't affect your ability to keep a score going or to post a score. It is an issue if you become very aware of a score and you start to feel the need to protect or push. So it's not, we've worked with tournament players who are very aware of what they're scoring, tournament players who are oblivious to what they're scoring, and everybody in between. So it's not an issue per se.
No, I agree. And I'm a score driven nut. I'm assessing, I use stats and performance to drive me on the golf course. So I think of how many setup, how many in positions I have today, where am I at? What was my goal? I'm playing games within the game, and that keeps, again, I'm a little ADD, so that keeps me in the moment and allows me to kind of fuel and kind of really help me with my plan to be able to target and attack, because if not, a lot of times I can just end up in some really weird spots on the golf course. So to me, I thrive off of score and stats and doing everything in round. Some players, that's the worst thing on earth. Like, they just can't do it, which is fine. And kind of goes back to what Gareth said. It's what allows you to perform and be the best you can be. Fall in love with that and don't change it.
Yeah. Brian, we've come, I think, to the end of our presentation. It is absolutely
We
flying.
totally overshot our 30 minutes. I apologize.
America, you couldn't stop talking.
Terrible.
So, Brian, please now, would you? This is the moment for your shameless plug. So, by all means, let's do this.
Well, if you're interested, GameForge is a wonderful platform out there that we do training. We do basically we do what we just talked about. We take the most important factors inside of golf. We track those and we show you your strengths and weaknesses. And I think the beauty of the system is it shows you where you're strong and where you're weak. And then you and Gareth can sit down and have a great conversation of what I need to do. If you're tired of being the same, you know, we always say, if you're the same or getting worse, you know, that's on you. What we can do is if we're not going in the right direction, let's create a plan and move it. And if it doesn't move, let's reassess and set up a new game plan. But if we're just doing what we've always done for 10 years and I've always shot, you know, 100, you know, probably 10 more years, you're probably going to still shoot 100. So really kind of start pushing yourself to think differently, challenge yourself, hold coaches accountable, hold yourself accountable, and go enjoy this wonderful game. It's a challenge. I love it.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for signing in tonight. It's always a great pleasure for us to share some information. You can probably sense that Brian and I are fairly passionate about this stuff. So thank you all for signing in, and I hope to see you all in the not too distant future.